Hey everyone, Chris here. So if you see me looking down, that's because my notes are down here. This is going to be the last of my initial videos covering spells in the new Player's Handbook. There's going to be more in the future, don't worry about that, but I just want to start by giving as much information about the Player's Handbook as possible, and then I'll get into more analysis later on. But in today's video, we're going to look at the brand new spells in the Player's Handbook. I'm going to show them on the screen, word for word. I'm going to go over the details, and I'll give you my first impressions. Keep in mind that although I've had a chance to review all these spells already, I actually have no experience playing with these spells yet, and so my opinions on them might evolve. But I'm interested in your first impressions as well, so share them in the comments. In my next video, I'm going to start covering the feats, and feats had quite a few changes, so that's likely going to be a series of videos as well. If you would like to see them right away, click the link in my Patreon in the video description. All the Player's Handbook reveal videos that I've completed to date are there for patrons to see right now. Patreon is essential for me to continue to create content like this full time, so a quick thank you to all my patrons. Your support is very appreciated. So let's get into the new spells. And the first one we're going to cover is Arcane Vigor. This is a second level spell. It's available to sorcerers and wizards. Neither class is known for healing spells, but this spell gives them a way to at least provide themselves with some quick healing. As you can see, it is a bonus action. That means that you could still cast another spell with your action as long as it's not using a spell slot. And it reads, you tap into your life force to heal yourself. Roll 1 or 2 of your unexpended hit dice and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll's total plus your spellcasting ability modifier. Those dice are then expended. And then we can upcast it, and each level we upcast it provides us the ability to expend 1 additional hit die. So this starts at second level, but it can be upcast to up to 9th level if you wanted to, though I would never consider casting this as a 9th level spell. But as a way to do some quick healing with a bonus action to yourself. Now, keep in mind, it is expending hit dice, so that means fewer to spend on a short rest. But on the other hand, adding your spellcasting ability modifier may be better for you than adding your constitution modifier. Overall, I think this is a decent spell, and for sorcerers and wizards who have so few options to recover hit points, I think I would probably almost certainly take this on a wizard and maybe on a sorcerer as well. And I was thinking about this afterwards, but you know, if I was a sorcerer and I took this spell, I do think I might look at Empower Metamagic to be something to enhance the spell with, because if you are running lower on hit dice, you want to get the most out of them that you can, and being able to re-roll those dice if you roll poorly, that might be worth a sorcery point. I figure out of 5, I'd give this 3 out of 5. It's in the middle somewhere. The next spell to cover is Divine Smite. I mean, this is technically a new spell, but only on a technicality. Now, the mechanics here are going to be similar to all the Smite spells. Our casting time is a bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a target with a melee weapon or unarmed strike. Now, this is very different than it was in the 2014 rules. In the 2014 rules, you could add a Divine Smite after any attack you wanted to. You just expended the spell slot, you got the damage. Not anymore. It requiring a bonus action ensures you're only going to do it once on your turn, and it's going to prevent you from taking a different bonus action. On the other hand, there is an improvement here that just by having it applied to an attack with a melee weapon means that thrown weapons are applicable for Divine Smites now. Also, unarmed strikes previously could not be used with the Divine Smite, now they can. So there are some improvements. As for the mechanics, once you apply it, they are the same. It's 2d8 radiant damage from the attack, an extra 1d8 if the target is a fiend or undead. And if you use a higher level spell slot, you get an additional d8 of damage. A difference there, though, is the cap is removed. In the old rules, you could not extend it beyond 5d8 or 6d8 for a fiend or undead. Now, technically speaking, you can use those higher level spell slots if you are multiclassed to upcast your Divine Smite even further. I'm not sure if I'd want to do that with my top level spell slots, but it is now at least an option for you. Now, I gotta be honest, I never considered Divine Smite to be just overwhelmingly powerful for Paladins, and quite often I considered the spells they could cast as good or better than expending those spell slots on Divine Smite. So here, I'd say overall, they've made it a little bit worse. I can't think this is better than a 2 out of 5, though I gotta say, if I'm playing a Paladin, I'm still probably going to use Divine Smite, but I would be looking very closely at those other Smite spells as a possible alternative. Remember though, if you are playing a Paladin of 2nd level or higher, you will be able to cast Divine Smite once for free, so you might as well do that for sure. And we have another new spell that's kind of new. So the Elementalism cantrip is available to Druids, Sorcerers, and Wizards, and it's going to be free for the Warrior of Elements Monk, which is largely the feature it was based on. The Warrior of Elements Monk had one of their options very similar to this cantrip. So looking at the spell, we can see that it is an action to cast with a 30-foot range, and these are your options with it. Beckon Air allows you to create a breeze. It's strong enough to ripple cloth, stir dust, rustle leaves, and close open doors and shutters, all in a 5-foot cube. Doors and shutters being held open by someone or something aren't affected. So obviously not a particularly strong feature there. Then we have Beckon Earth. You create a thin shroud of dust or sand that covers surfaces in a 5-foot square area. Or you can cause a single word to appear in your handwriting in a patch of dirt or sand. Again, not something I'd consider overly powerful. Then we have Beckon Fire. You create a thin cloud of harmless embers and colored scented smoke in a 5-foot cube. You choose the color and the scent, and the embers can light candles, torches, or lamps in that area. That might occasionally be useful. The smoke scent lingers for 1 minute. And then Beckon Water. You create a spray of cool mist that lightly dampens creatures and objects within a 5-foot cube. Alternatively, you can create 1 cup of clean water in either an open container or on a surface, and the water evaporates after 1 minute. So there might be certain situations where you're low on water, where that might give you a chance to create some drinking water. That might circumstantially be useful. And then Sculpt Element. You cause dirt, sand, fire, smoke, mist, or water that can fit a 1-foot cube to assume a crude shape, such as that of a creature, for 1 hour. So nothing here is very powerful, but this does remind me very much of cantrips like Thaumaturgy, Druidcraft, or Prestidigitation, where we're getting a lot of flavorful stuff, and it's fairly versatile even though it's not very powerful. So if you are playing that style of character, throwing a cantrip like this on there, it's going to give you some good role-playing options, but I wouldn't be putting it on there because I'm looking to create a power character. In terms of power, I give it 2 out of 5 because there is some occasional uses for it. Fount of Moonlight is a brand new spell, 4th level, and it's available to both bards and to druids. And if I look at this, Conjure Minor Elementals, which I've gone over in a previous video, I flagged as being overpowered, but I would say at the 4th level casting, this is arguably better than Conjure Minor Elementals. What Conjure Minor Elementals has over this is Conjure Minor Elementals upcast extremely well. This one doesn't have an upcast option at all, but it's going to mix pretty good damage and control. I'm not sure how much you need Radiant Resistance. That tends to be a damage type. You don't need a lot, but let's go over the details of the spell. So it is a 1-action casting time. It is self-only. Concentration lasts 10 minutes. And then basically a light reads your body for the duration. It emits bright light in a 20-foot radius, dim light for an additional 20 feet. Until the spell ends, you have resistance to radiant damage, and your melee attacks deal an extra 2d6 radiant damage on a hit. So keep that in mind. Although spells like Conjure Minor Elementals have a range limit, a very, very short range limit, they still can be applied with ranged weapons or ranged spell attacks. With Fount of Moonlight, you are limited to melee attacks only, though they could be spell attacks or weapon attacks or unarmed strikes or whatever. In addition, immediately after you take damage from a creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself, you can take a reaction to force the creature to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the creature has the blinded condition until the end of your next turn. So this rider is, I think, what makes this better than Conjure Minor Elementals at 4th level. Although Conjure Minor Elementals is doing a tiny bit more damage, the damages are very comparable. You add in this rider, that gives you a pretty decent reaction if you get hit. I mean, obviously, if you want to avoid being hit, you're going to use something like the shield spell. But if the shield spell isn't going to prevent a hit, let's say you're critically hit or something, then Fount of Moonlight gives you a reaction. Another thing to remember is bards and druids don't have access to the shield spell. So unless you've gotten it through something else, like multiclassing or Magic Initiate, you might not have a reaction if you are hit with an attack, in which case Fount of Moonlight gives you a pretty good reaction. This is a very good spell. I don't know if it's 5 out of 5 because there are more powerful spells in the game, but this is very powerful. I am going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. At 7th or 8th level, when 4th level spells are your best option, and if you're using melee attacks, Fount of Moonlight is going to be an extremely strong choice. Next up, we have Jallarzi's Storm of Radiance, and we didn't even see this one in the playtest. This is a level 5 evocation available to Warlocks and Wizards. It's a 1-action casting time with a 120-foot range. It lasts up to 1 minute using your concentration. And what happens is you create a cylinder within that range. It is a 10-foot radius, so 20 feet across, and 40 feet high. Within the area, the creatures have blinded and deafened conditions, and there is no saving throw. So if you cast this, whatever creatures were in the area, they are automatically blinded and deafened, and they can't cast spells with a verbal component. When you cast a spell, everyone in there makes a Constitution saving throw. They take 2d10 radiant damage and 2d10 thunder damage, which are both pretty reliable damage types, on a failed save, or half as much on a successful save. Creature also makes this save when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn, or ends its turn there. Creature may only make this save once per turn, and if we upcast, we increase both the radiant damage and the thunder damage by a d10. So the biggest limitation of this spell, of course, is that a creature who is in it when it's cast can simply walk out on their turn. What you are going to want to do with this spell is combine it. This is where you're going to have your grappling characters in play, or complementary spell casting with a web spell or something like that is going to keep those creatures in that area, keep them blinded, and keep them from casting probably all of their spells. Most spells have a verbal component, so unless they have something like Subtle Spell or the ability to cast spells without components, there's a good chance they'll lose all their spell casting as well. And also, in terms of teleporting out, they're not going to have a lot of options because being blinded, that is going to prevent any teleportation that requires that they see their destination, which in most cases with monsters is all the teleports. So it really is going to come down to, if you cast this, it's going to be in combination with someone who can drag or keep those enemies in that area, and then I think it will be a pretty effective spell. If you don't have that, they're simply going to walk out and it's not going to do much. Now, the thing I will mention is the upcasting here is pretty good because you're getting 2d10 per spellcasting level. Overall, I think this has the potential to be a very powerful spell, but you will have to plan. You will have to work with other party members. This is very much a teamwork spell. And so out of power, I'd say it's 3 out of 5. It's solid, but you do need to plan around it. Next up, we have Power Word Fortify. This one we did see in the playtest. It is a 7th level spell available to bards and clerics. It's a 1-action cast, 60 feet. You fortify up to 6 creatures you can see within range. The spell bestows 120 temporary hit points, which you can divide amongst the spell's recipients. Now, if you think about 120 hit points spread 6 ways, that's 20 temporary hit points per target. That doesn't sound like a lot for a 7th level spell, because if you think about it, 7th level spell, you got to be at least 13th level to cast it. If you had something like Inspiring Leader, that's going to be providing 13 plus your ability modifier to temporary hit points after any rest, and that's not going to expend a 7th level slot. This isn't that much more. Where I think the power of this spell lies is not spreading out that 120 hit points, but applying it in one place. You got that guy who's right in the middle of things, right in front. He is being picked on. He hit power word Fortify, and he gets 120 temporary hit points. And there's nothing that I can think of in the game that isn't going to, polymorph him or something that is going to give him that many temporary hit points. So that is pretty good. But it is a 7th level spell, so this is not a light investment to make. Now, I gotta be honest, if I'm a bard and I'm capable of casting 7th level spells, that means I already have magical secrets, which means I have access to all the cleric spells, all the druid spells, and all the wizard spells, in addition to the bard spells. I don't know if I'm going to choose this as my 7th level spell, but if I am a cleric, I have a lot fewer options, and level 7 and level 8 are not great spell levels for cleric. I could definitely see taking this. Think about it this way. You got somebody who's very damaged. You could hit him with a heal spell at 7th level, and you'd heal 70 hit points, or you could do power word Fortify and give him 120 temporary hit points. I think that could be very valuable. I think this is a decent spell, 3 out of 5. And here we have a brand new cantrip, Sorcerous Burst. Now, we did see this in the playtest, and I'm pretty happy with where they landed with this. This is a cantrip that's only available to sorcerers. Now, we can't even get sorcerer spells through Magic Initiate anymore, or through Magical Secrets anymore. That means you must be a sorcerer to get this cantrip. Action casting time, 120-foot range. You cast Sorcerous Energy at one creature or object within range. Make a ranged attack roll against the target. On a hit, the target takes a d8 damage of a type you choose. Acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, psychic, or thunder. That's quite the range of options. If you roll an 8 on the d8 for the spell, you can roll another d8 and add it to the damage. When you cast a spell, the maximum number of d8s that you can add to the spell's damage equals your spell casting ability modifier. I do not see a very high likelihood that you'll ever be in a situation where that limitation is going to come into play. And then the damage increases by a d8 at level 5, 11, and 17, which is standard for cantrips. So when you're rolling 4d8, you have a better chance of rolling at least 1 8. But again, I don't think you'll ever reach your spell casting ability modifier in rerolls. If you do, just be aware that you have broken all the odds. That said, d8 is pretty standard for cantrip damage. 120-foot range is pretty good. Some of them are capped at 60 feet range. And being able to choose from all these damage types is pretty good. It means that you should be able to bypass pretty much any resistance or immunity. And the exploding die makes the d8 a little bit better. So it's probably closer to a d10 in terms of power. So if I'm looking at D10 cantrips that have 120-foot range, that have reliable damage, it's basically Eldritch Blast and Sorcerous Burst. So this is in very good company, and I'd say this is a very good cantrip, 4 out of 5. From one attack cantrip to another, we have Starry Wisp. This is a new evocation cantrip for bards and druids. So a one-action casting with a 60-foot range, so half the range of Sorcerous Burst. You launch a Mote of Light at one creature or object within range, and I should mention this as well. So in the old rules, most cantrips can't attack objects. So if you are casting a Firebolt, you can target an object. But if you're casting a Ray of Frost, you can't. So I had to go through the cantrip rules one more time just to make sure what I was saying was accurate. This is accurate. Okay, so in the old rules, if you wanted to hit an object with an attack roll cantrip, you only had one option, and that is Firebolt. Firebolt has the unique wording that you can target an object. All the rest are limited to creatures. That has changed in the new rules. Now, a lot of attack cantrips can target objects. In fact, the only attack cantrips that can't target objects now are Poison Spray, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp, and Thorn Whip. Those cantrips are still limited to creatures only, but all other attack cantrips can now attack objects. You make a ranged spell attack against a target. On a hit, the target takes a d8 radiant damage. Radiant is a pretty reliable damage type. and until the end of your next turn, it emits dim light in a 10-foot radius and can't benefit from the invisible condition. And then we have our standard upgrades at 5th, 11th, and 17th level. So the rider here, where they can't benefit from the invisible condition, I'd consider pretty circumstantial. If you take a cantrip, it's normally something you expect to cast a lot. So most of the time you cast Starry Wisp, that's not going to make much difference. The target emitting light usually isn't going to make any difference either. So for the most part, we're talking about a D8 cantrip with a pretty reliable damage type and a 60-foot range. I definitely think this doesn't measure up to Sorcerous Burst, but druids and bards are not known for having a lot of great attack cantrips, so at least this gives them an option that actually uses an attack roll. So it'll be still something that I think a lot of druids and bards take, even though it's not one of the better attack cantrips. I think as far as attack cantrips go, I can't give it more than 2 out of 5, despite the fact that the classes that can get it, I mean, it's a case of beggars can't be choosers. So here's a spell I am surprised we didn't see in the playtest because it is very different. But I guess they wanted to keep some surprises for us. But it is Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron, a level 6 Warlock and Wizard spell. So not a low-level spell. 5-foot range, action to cast, last 10 minutes, no concentration. It does have a costly component. You need a gilded label worth 500 gold pieces or more, but that is not consumed with the casting of the spell, so it would be a one-time investment. You conjure a claw-footed cauldron filled with bubbling liquid. The cauldron appears in an unoccupied space on the ground within 5 feet of you and lasts for the duration. The cauldron can't be moved, and it disappears when the spell ends, along with the bubbling liquid inside of it. One interesting part of the wording there I noticed there is the cauldron can't be moved. So I'm wondering whether this spell could also maybe take the place of something like an immovable rod, right? Where you have this object that cannot be moved by any means. I'm not sure. I'd have to see the situation to see where this might come in handy, but I did note that not be moved is pretty dramatic. The liquid in the cauldron duplicates the properties of a common or uncommon potion of your choice, such as a potion of healing. As a bonus action, you or an ally can reach into the cauldron and withdraw 1 potion of that kind. The potion is contained in a vial that disappears when the potion is consumed. Note that the bonus action is to draw the potion. You're going to need another bonus action to drink the potion. Now, a lot of question came into play during the reveal videos last month about are all potions now a bonus action to consume or just healing potions? And the answer is, I don't know. It says specifically under the healing potion that it is a bonus action to consume, and that is the only potion in the player's handbook. So presumably, if other potions are also a bonus action to consume, they will say so in the text of those potions that we won't see until they publish the Dungeon Master's Guide. But assuming they are bonus actions, that means it's going to be 1 bonus action to draw the potion, 1 bonus action to drink the potion. That will not be able to be done on the same round, so just keep that in mind. However, if other potions are an action to consume, then it could be done in the same round, but it's going to basically take your entire turn. The cauldron can produce a number of these potions equal to your spellcasting ability modifier, minimum 1. I'd hope you have at least 1. When the last of these potions is withdrawn from the cauldron disappears and the spell ends. Potions obtained from the cauldron that aren't consumed disappear when you cast the spell again. So, I would assume that if you're casting 6th level spells, you're going to have at least a +4 in your spellcasting ability modifier and potentially a +5. So, we're talking 4 to 5 potions. So common and uncommon potions. Now the designation for what is a common or uncommon potion might change when the Dungeon Master's Guide comes out, but I can at least tell you now, based on our current Dungeon Master's Guide and other major source books, what potions would be available. So it would be 4 to 5 of Oil of Slipperiness, Filter of Love, Potion of Animal Friendship, Potion of Climbing, Potion of Fire Breath, Potion of Hill Giant Strength, that's pretty interesting, Potion of Growth, Potion of Healing, Potion of Poison, Potion of Resistance, Potion of Water Breathing. I gotta say that none of these are massively powerful, but there's a lot of versatility here. So, like, you could give 5 people 21 strength for an hour, no concentration. You could give 5 people resistance to a damage type of your selection. Again, no concentration. So I think there's great versatility built in here that makes this a pretty good spell. So I gotta give it a 4 out of 5. Another spell we did not see in the playtest is Yolande's Regal Presence. This is a 5th level spell available to bards and wizards. Immediately upon reading this spell, you have to kind of look at Spirit Guardians and compare it because they are very similar. So this is an action to cast. It lasts concentration only 1 minute for this one, so much lower duration. You surround yourself with Unearthly Majesty in a 10-foot emanation, so smaller emanation. Whenever the emanation enters the space of a creature you can see, and whenever a creature you can see enters the emanation or ends its turn there, this is the standard times that creatures make saves for these kinds of spells now. On a failed save, they take 46 psychic damage and have the prone condition, and you can push it 10 feet away. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage only. A creature makes this save only once per turn. So the damage here of 46 is just less than I would expect from Spirit Guardians. I mean, if you cast Spirit Guardians at 3rd level, this would be fairly close. But this is a 5th level spell. If I was to cast Spirit Guardians at 5th level, I'd be looking at 5d8 damage. So the damage here is not good. The duration is also not good. The 10-foot emanation is a little bit smaller. This is all about, you give them the prone condition, you push them 10 feet away. And remember, when the emanation enters their space, they make that saving throw. So you can, I would imagine with this spell, what you would want is to have a character that has a high movement speed. Maybe you have Long Strider up. Maybe you have the jump spell up. Other kind of movement enhancers. And then you just run around the battlefield, making sure you connect with everybody, and then you're pushing them prone and pushing them away. If you can circle around them from the right position, you might push them into other dangerous effects. So I could definitely see this spell being useful, but boy, you're going to have to plan it. I would imagine you're going to want lots of enemies on the battlefield, and you're going to really want to use that prone and push as a way to make this spell the one you want to cast versus similar other spells like Conjure Woodland Beings or Spirit Guardians. I think it's good enough to be a 3 out of 5 or maybe a 2.5 out of 5. And those are all the new spells I've gone over. So any other spell that you were told was new probably came from Tasha's and got imported over to the new Player's Handbook. These are all the actual new spells. And overall, I am pretty satisfied. There were no 5s you noticed, no 1s you noticed. That means that all these spells are at least somewhat balanced. And when it comes to those 2 out of 5 spells, I mean, if I'm a bard, I'm still taking Starry Wisp, even though it's a 2 out of 5, because I want an attack cantrip. And it's not that much worse. Same thing with the druid. I mean, I can do Produce Flame, or I can do Starry Wisp, and they're very similar spells, and I'd say Starry Wisp might be the better of the two. Yes, Firebolt has a much better range, but neither of those classes have Firebolt. And Divine Smite is worse, but Paladins are still going to Smite. Now, what I would imagine is most Paladins will be looking at other Smite spells as well, and Divine Smite be something they use for Fiends and Undead, while they might be using different Smite spells for different creatures. That's not necessarily a bad thing for the game, I think, but I do see Paladins using Divine Smite at least less often than we saw in the previous rule set. And that is it for my spells videos. So I've told you the ones that have been rebalanced, the ones that notably have not been rebalanced. I've told you the ones that I thought had changes that were interesting. I've told you the ones that are new. And now I'm going to be moving on to feats. So in my next video, I'm going to cover the origin feats. And then I will move on to general feats from there. And that will probably be a couple videos because there are a lot of general feats to go over. So I hope you'll join me for that. Otherwise, until next time, gonna sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.